Silverstone is here, and I'm sure you've already heard plenty of talk from Mercedes about them bringing upgrades, but they are by no means the biggest on the grid. The Silver Arrows might call Silverstone their home race, but with half the grid having factories within 100 miles of the track, one of which is literally just across the road, they'll all want to be winning here. Today we'll have a look at who has what for the British Grand Prix, who might claim that best of the rest spot behind Max Verstappen, and who could be on for the biggest shock of the race. So, don't go anywhere. I want to start off with the less talked about teams on the grid before we get to the battle for best of the rest. The back of the grid has been a bit of a non-event so far this season, mostly due to the fact that the battle for best of the rest includes 11 of the cars on the grid, with Max Verstappen in a league of his own. Alpine have made the occasional foray towards the front of the chasing pack when the track suits them, more on that later. McLaren's new floor did wonders for Lando Norris in Austria as well, so expect more from them over the coming races. With that big pack all being competitive on their day, Alfa Towery, Alfa Romeo, Williams and Haas don't get the same chances at a shock points finish as they have done in past seasons. Haas have the advantage at the moment due to Nico Hülkenberg's ability to drive really fast for exactly one lap before his tyres disintegrate. All of that could change though, with big upgrades coming to two of those four teams, the two Alphas, Romeo and Towery. Let's look at Alfa Towery first. Despite Yuki Tsunoda's incredible consistency this season, consistently finishing first of the last 10 cars wins you exactly nothing in Formula 1. His 2 10th places are the only points the team have scored this season. Despite this, in a recent press conference, many drivers said he was the second most impressive driver this season behind Max Verstappen. Plenty of drivers think he's completely outdriving that car, which bodes well for Yuki's future. The young Japanese driver will be hoping that his team can provide him with the upgrades needed to start scoring some more regular points. His teammate Nick De Vries is probably just hoping Helmut Marko doesn't fire him before the summer break. To try and help their drivers, the Alfa Tauri team will introduce a new floor during the British Grand Prix weekend that targets a significant improvement in what has been the biggest weakness of the AT04 so far this season. While it has made a little progress at improving its low-speed performance with floor upgrades introduced for Race 3 in Australia and Race 6 in Monaco, it needs a big step to be a points threat at more than only the tracks that play to its strength, such as Barcelona, where Yuki Tsunoda finished 9th on the road before dropping out of the points with a penalty for forcing Zhou Guanyu off the track. The new rear wing and beam wing introduced in Austria last week worked as expected, but according to head of trackside engineering Jonathan Edols, it wasn't enough to propel us forward. But then again, it was only ever expected to be a small step. He describes the British Grand Prix floor upgrade as a more significant step that the team hopes should make it more competitive. Certainly, its performance would already be expected to be better at high-speed Silverstone. I have a soft spot for Yuki because he isn't as media trained as many of the other drivers on the grid. His team radio explosions always make me smile, but hopefully at Silverstone it'll be an explosion of happiness, not frustration in his race engineers' ears. The other Alfa, Romeo this time, are also hoping to improve in Britain this weekend. They are another team who have been on the cusp at times, but with the midfield pack how they are, they haven't been able to pick up the scraps they normally would. Zhou Guanyu and Valtteri Bottas have been doing the best they can, or so it seems, but a lack of improvement in the car recently has seen them slipping backwards. They had the slowest car outright on pace in Austria and slipped to the slowest on average pace over the season after a difficult weekend at the Red Bull Ring. Hopefully these upgrades can turn this decline around. The changes will include floor modifications, and it's hoped that it will build on the progress made with the major upgrade package introduced in Monaco in May that included tweaked side pods and engine covers, floor modifications, and revised aero fairings on the rear suspension, on top of circuit-specific changes. Alfa Romeo have been really weak in a straight line and high-speed corners this season, and these changes should help address that, which is perfect for a fast track like Silverstone. The team is also targeting improvements in qualifying, given that its general trend for race pace is to be better than qualifying pace. Alfa Romeo has only reached Q3 once this season, courtesy of Bottas in Miami. Williams, which introduced a major upgrade package in Canada, is also expected to bring development parts to Silverstone on what could be a significant weekend in impacting the balance of power in the 4-car group battling for 7th to 10th places in the standings. What about further forward though? Could Mercedes' long-promised upgrades bring them closer to Max Verstappen? Or should they be more worried about what is happening at Ferrari and McLaren? After a difficult 18 months, Mercedes have been recently optimistic that they're finally getting on top of their problems. The upgraded W14 has given them some encouraging results, and both drivers and the team could have reasonably expected to compete for the podium spots at last weekend's Austrian Grand Prix. Yet, they had another disappointing weekend, with Lewis Hamilton finishing 8th and George Russell 7th, losing more ground to their closest rivals Aston Martin and Ferrari. It was strange to hear Toto Wolff on the radio telling Hamilton that they knew their car was bad. They'd not gone too badly before Sunday, but their race was a bit of a disaster. Why did Mercedes struggle so much at the Red Bull Ring? Austria is a more traditional racing track like Montreal and Monaco, but it is still fairly unusual. The rear end of a car is very important, and that is one of Mercedes' main weaknesses this year. Hamilton was given a warning by his team about exceeding track limits, and responded with a telling comment: "I can't keep it on the track, the car won't turn." Doing so repeatedly meant he ended up with a 10-second time penalty, dropping him from 7th on the road to 8th. It was no real surprise that the car struggled in the final 2 corners, purely because of how they chose to set up Hamilton's car. The main area where you make up time in Austria are the exits of the tight turns 1 and 3. The rear of the car is so important here, and Mercedes clearly had an eye on that. But they chose a strange and naive route to help them limit the rear tyre wear. They took downforce off their front wing for the race. This just does not work, and is more of a last-minute bandage than an attempt to get to the bottom of their rear-end problems. The ultimate endpoint for their chosen setup was that the car was good on new, responsive tyres, but when the tyres were worn, it was slow because of persistent understeer. A race isn't run on new tyres for very long. The way they set up Hamilton's car would have been more understandable for a team like Williams or Alfa Romeo. A gamble for them is worth taking on the off chance they score points. But Mercedes have so many advanced tools compared to a team further back. It's a baffling decision. Anytime they made up on the new tyres, they lost on the old ones. Perhaps it was another sign of Mercedes' lack of experience when they aren't just outright faster than the rest of the grid. Thankfully for Mercedes, the British Grand Prix later this week at Silverstone should suit their car more. Hamilton competed for victory there last year, and whilst it was too much to expect the W14 to challenge the Red Bull, their hopes of a podium are far greater than in Austria. Why? Well, the Silverstone track will not expose their rear-end weakness as much as Austria. It is much more of a generalist track, requiring a little of everything and a lot of driver bravery, which George Russell and Lewis Hamilton have in spades. There is more though, as trackside engineering director Andrew Shovlin has explained how the W14 will be adapted again on home turf at Silverstone. "We've got updates coming to the car. We have a new front wing that we're going to be bringing that will hopefully move us a bit further up the grid." Not quite the massive changes we were all expecting then, but with the track favouring them, perhaps Mercedes can dispatch their rivals at a race that Lewis Hamilton will be desperate to win. Finally, in contrast to rivals such as Ferrari and McLaren, Alpine didn't bring any updates to the Red Bull Ring, but the introduction of a new front wing at Silverstone this weekend will hopefully close the gap to the other midfield teams once more. They had started the season well, the podium at Monaco being a particular highlight, but recently their development cycle has left them a step behind their competitors. I think many teams made steps in the last 2 races, and we definitely need to make one as well, so I look forward to seeing what we can do, said Ocon. As with Mercedes, the Silverstone track should suit Alpine much better than Austria did, so we could see a very close battle between Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren, Aston Martin, Alpine and Sergio Perez for podium positions. We're expecting this race to be an absolute battlefield, and we can't wait. Do you think the 2 Alphas can improve this weekend? And who will win the battle for best of the rest? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.